Russell Westbrook has been one of the most hated players in the entire NBA. He regularly faces criticism he doesn't deserve, and everything he does is looked at under a microscope. But I mean, all this guy does is go hard. So how could you hate it? Westbrook is without a doubt one of the most intense players I've ever watched play the game of basketball. He wears his heart and his emotion on his sleeve. He does this not only for himself, but also for his teammates. He wants to win, and regardless of what any basketball fan says, Westbrook has been a winner his whole career. When you look at the legacy and the numbers that Westbrook left behind in Oklahoma City, you have to wonder, this is legendary. How doesn't this guy have more MVPs? How could the NBA possibly get tired of somebody averaging a triple-double? Especially when it's only been done by one other player in the history of the entire NBA. Imagine being so good that you desensitize an entire population to one of the greatest basketball feats in history. Perhaps what's even crazier is that the Rockets have somebody else that's also desensitizing an entire population. James Harden is averaging almost 40 points a game this season, and he's doing it in absurd fashion. Teams have tried everything when it comes to stopping James Harden, but none of them have been successful. I'm not sure there's any way to stop somebody like James Harden, somebody that's so crafty and creative with the basketball. We're looking at one of the best scorers to ever play the game, truly prolific at what he does. But not only is he a threat to score the ball, he's also a threat to go for a monster amount of assists. As a matter of fact, I believe he's one of the best passers in the entire NBA. And no, I don't think that's due to his ball dominance, but I do think the ball dominance does help him out, just a bit. I truly think James Harden is one of the few players in the entire NBA that doesn't have a flaw in their offensive game. We're talking about somebody that could drop 50 on you any given night. And just because he gets to the free throw line often, that doesn't mean he has to. I honestly feel that's where a lot of hate for somebody like James Harden comes from. But regardless, this season James Harden is averaging 38.8 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 7.5 assists. His point per game total puts him behind only Wilt Chamberlain all time. And Wilt Chamberlain was only able to average more than James Harden twice. This is something that's almost unheard of in the modern NBA. Not only is James Harden averaging more points than Kobe Bryant in his 35 point per game season, but he's also outpacing Michael Jordan, who put up 37 points a game in the 1986-1987 season. No matter how you spin it, what this dude is doing is absolutely phenomenal. I think James Harden has been somebody for most of his career that has done more with less. We've seen many players leave the Rockets and have their career go downhill. I think that's because, like Russell Westbrook, James Harden is a player that can elevate and take players to another level. But of course, I don't feel like the Rockets rosters have always been bad. I feel like when they had Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell, and Pat Beverly, they had a good system in place. I enjoyed that Rockets team like no other. I love seeing Pat Bev lock up on side of James Harden. You could see the hunger and you could see the fight, but that team wouldn't exactly last the longest. All of those guys would end up getting traded for Chris Paul. The Rockets sacrificed their depth to go get a superstar, to go get a big-time player. Chris Paul would be the best player that James Harden had ever played with. And to this day, I still fully believe that the Rockets should have beat the Warriors. And I'm not talking about last year, even though the opportunity was there also. I know the Rockets went historically cold against Golden State to finish the series, but what if that doesn't happen? What if the Rockets are the team that ends up with the favorable calls instead of Golden State? We could be looking at a completely different NBA timeline. James Harden gets his ring and takes down one of the best dynasties in sports history. Would we view him or the Chris Paul saga differently? The Rockets had their moment. They just didn't come through. And now they're searching for an opportunity to get it back. Don't get it confused. Opportunity doesn't always come around twice, but neither do generational talents like Russell Westbrook or Chris Paul. This video, I'm going to be going in depth on how Russell Westbrook could be the missing piece for the Houston Rockets championship hopes, and how him being the best version of himself gives the Rockets the best chance to win the title. But before we go any further, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You guys will not want to miss another GETLIKECOOP video. And that's facts. I'm trying to get to 200,000 subscribers so I can go full time, guys, and bring you daily content. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. So with players having big games and some surprise narratives in the NBA, I've been moving a few of the videos that I've had planned back, which is unfortunate, but I think you guys are going to enjoy the new content that I'm going to bring you guys in place of that, and you're still going to get the content that I have planned. Also, be sure to leave your suggestions down in the comments below. Guys, that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown video is coming soon. But also, don't forget to follow my Instagram, guys. Handle GETLIKECOOP. You will not want to miss another post. So the reason I brought up Chris Paul earlier is because I think that Russell Westbrook has a chance to approach rare territory with James Harden. You see, the fact of the matter is that Chris Paul, all around pass first point guard Chris Paul, is somehow the best scorer that James Harden has ever played with. The second best scorer is Dwight Howard, and I think the third best ends up being like Eric Gordon. When you look at the help that James Harden has had over the length of his career, compared to other superstar players, it's not exactly equal. These are guys that were 18 point per game scorers in Houston. When you look at Dwight Howard and James Harden, you look at something that could have been really special, but Dwight Howard had role confusion during his time in Houston, and it was actually unfortunate because that could have been a really dominant duo had Dwight Howard bought into the system. Now, when you get Russell Westbrook here, you have somebody that's missed a ton of time this offseason, and as a matter of fact, hasn't been able to play up to their standard until recently. During this time, a lot of people had unnecessary hate for Russell Westbrook, and that's been the case for most of his career. But he's finally getting healthy now. He's finally starting to learn what works and what doesn't. It takes time. These things take time. Russell Westbrook has never played with a player like James Harden in his entire career. You can say that he played with James Harden during his younger days, but James Harden was not the James Harden that he is now. These are two completely different types of players and two completely different types of systems. In Russell Westbrook's first 20 games with the Houston Rockets, he didn't score over 30 one time, but in his last 6 games, he's done so over 4 times. During the Rockets' last 10 games, they went 8-2, and this is around the time that Westbrook started to turn everything around. The Rockets not only having a second star in Russell Westbrook, but a second superstar is pivotal because, again, we've seen what teams will go to stop James Harden from going off, and at times they really didn't have a player in the past who could shoulder the scoring load similar to what James Harden can. And I'm not saying Russell Westbrook can be that prolific scorer that James Harden is, but he can give you offense in mass amounts. He's that good of a basketball player. For reference, Chris Paul, his highest points total with the Houston Rockets was 38. That's his whole time with the Houston Rockets. Russell Westbrook has already had a 40-point performance, and that 40-point performance was huge, not only for Russ, but for the Houston Rockets as a whole. Russ had 40 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. He was also 12 of 13 from the free throw line. He did this against a Clippers team that's supposed to be one of the best teams in the league. A team that's supposed to be capable of locking down any player on any given night. They have multiple big-time defenders, and they're one of the most physical teams in the entire NBA. Doc Rivers said the biggest run for the Rockets against the Clippers came when James was out. That was with a bunch of guys on the floor and Russ decided, I'm taking this over. And all the other role players played their role for the team. They did a great job. We talked about it that morning when James got out of the game. Russ becomes Oklahoma Russ, and we didn't handle that very well. Doc went on to say, we gave so much attention to Harden that we forgot about the other MVP on the team. You've got to respect him and play him the right way. I thought we lost our discipline tonight a lot on him, especially in transition. We were jabbing at the ball in the backcourt. Once he gets in front of you, you're not catching him. At least nobody that I've seen. And I thought that happened over and over again in the second half. Teams can't play James Harden like they have in the past. And if you do, you're going to get punished by another big-time player. The Rockets are starting to get Oklahoma Russ. And Oklahoma Russ is a completely different monster that this team has never had before. It's easy to forget that Russell Westbrook has been recovering from an injury or that he hasn't had a full offseason. Early in the season, I felt like Russell Westbrook wasn't exactly playing with confidence and that he may have been trying to adapt to the system a little bit too much. I saw him skipping a lot of the shots he would normally take. But now I'm starting to see Russell Westbrook play his confident style of basketball, get to the mid-range area, take shots that are good shots for him, and work himself into the game effectively and efficiently. I see him attacking hard and looking explosive. He's simply too much to handle when he gets out and he's aggressive in transition. He's a polarizing player that attracts a lot of defensive attention. I love it when he's not settling, and I have to think that his shot's only going to get better as the season goes on. At one point, Russ's shot had reached historically bad marks, but you have to keep into account that with the Oklahoma City Thunder and a completely healthy offseason, that Russell Westbrook at one point was shooting catch and shoot 3-pointers at around 38%, which is very impressive for a player that has the play style and the aggressiveness that Russ has. The second that Russ arrived in Houston, D'Antoni made it known that he wanted Russ to be MVP Russ from the get-go, and he's done a good job of enforcing that. Recently, he's been staggering the minutes between Russ and James Harden very well, so that Russ can get going and get a feel for the offense. Also, from the moment that Russ arrived in Houston, I love the spacing opportunity that Houston would present. You see, Houston isn't the best three-point shooting team in the league, but they take so many of them, and they're still one of the best offenses in the entire NBA. The Houston Rockets actually shoot the three ball below average, which might surprise a lot of people for the frequency that they take them. But of course, below average is all semantics. They're 2% away from being one of the best teams in the entire NBA. Harden and Westbrook do a fantastic job of creating looks for others, and these looks are wide open. They're top 5 in the NBA per game for wide open three-pointer percentage, despite Harden taking so many contested ones. How's that for data? Do you think with James Harden and Russell Westbrook playing at absurdly high levels that the Rockets can be true title contenders this season? Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to click the video on the screen right now, guys. It's me going over how Giannis Antetokounmpo could be the most dominant player in the NBA right now. Be sure to subscribe, notice on. I'm GETLIKECOOP, and I'm out.